Hi out there. Here I am. I'm live alone. This feels kind of weird and unusual. For those of you I don't know, I'm Beth Napleton, and I work with leaders in mission-driven organizations to help them navigate the challenges of leaderships. I largely work with folks who are in schools or connected to education, but not exclusively, because so much of leading in mission-driven organizations is similar no matter what the clientele you serve is or who the clientele are, who you work with. So I've done a lot of things in my day. I've been a national award-winning teacher, an instructional leader, a dean. I directed and managed through layers and basically was a superintendent of a small summer school, training for Teach for America. And I most recently was the founder and chief executive officer of a small charter school network on the far south side of Chicago that sent 100% of our students to college, despite the 6-year graduation rate there being from college being 2%. So I am really excited to go live today. It feels a little weird to be by myself, but I am looking forward to some comments and to seeing how people are and talking about leading that will not break your soul. So yes, first of all, the question on everyone's mind, absolutely, this was inspired. The title was absolutely inspired by the new Beyonce song that dropped on June 20th. The content has been decades in the making, but the title was very much inspired by Beyonce, and I am singing it all the time as I work on this. And so I want to start first by talking about the problem that I see. And so I'm going to zoom out a little bit from talking about leading that won't break my soul to talk about this context that I'm putting in, which is a program that I have called the Learning Lab. I'm going to throw the link at the bottom here so that you can check out a lot more about it if you're listening or see this later and a clip is needed. So I want to talk about the problem. So I have worked in education for decades. I ran the largest community service program at Columbia University in college that worked in something like 25 New York City elementary schools. I have been a teacher. I have been a dean. I have been a grade level chair. I've seen a lot in my time. I've worked at Teach for America. I've worked at other nonprofits. I've worked in everything from operations to program to leadership and managing through layers. And through it all, I have seen that there is a mission, and then there is a group of people who you want to experience that mission. So for example, I'm going to talk about students today in a school as one example. And so we've got our mission, we've got our kids in our school, and then we've got the adults who most directly work with them, and then the adults who work with those adults as they go through. And that last layer is what I want to focus on, because adults who work with the group you're most hoping to impact, a lot of stuff can go wrong there. Like a shocking amount of things can go wrong. So I remember once being in a cafeteria of a school I worked in where I was a leader. And I was not the leader, but I was a leader. And the principal was away for the day for a conference. And a colleague of ours basically, it's kind of like, you got this, you good? And we were like, yeah, we're good. And then something happened with students. And I had a colleague who just literally started to respond to this in the moment with the best training he knew how and the best situation. And I looked at a friend of mine and was like, oh my God, no, you didn't. Oh my God. He did not just command the attention of the entire cafeteria to address something that 100% should have been addressed privately with the student. And that face that I'm making and that thought of like, oh my God, no, you didn't. Oh, no, you didn't. Happened so much. Sometimes I look like this on the outside and was like, yeah, okay, we'll talk. And sometimes I was like panicked and ready to roll. But I think that I have seen so many times that adults do things in their work with other adults that can hurt kids or minimize your effectiveness or make it more difficult to achieve your mission. So sometimes it's something that people do. They say something that's demotivating. People will quit because they feel disrespected. They check out. They start coming to work late and leaving early. And sometimes things that they don't do. So for example, there's clearly a problem on a team and the leader is not addressing it. They're not holding people to expectations. They're not working with adults through difficult issues. So I've just seen this area of adults who work with adults trying to get to other kids be a source of so many problems and so many challenges. And so this has been something I've been thinking about since I've been leading schools and since I've been leading organizations and teams forever. And so I think that what that really gave me was that if you really want kids to be learning, if you want kids to be growing, if you want them to be serious, if you want them to be nurtured and happy and loving learning, you need to pay some serious attention to the adults who work with the adults that they work directly with. So I wish I had a whiteboard here so that I could really draw this out. And look, like leading adults is hard, right? People do not always do what you ask. Sometimes you say things you think it's very clear and it's actually not that clear. Sometimes they don't agree with you and they just go do their own thing anyway. Sometimes they challenge your authority, and that can really strike at your own insecurities or your own fear or your own unsureness or your own directive from the larger organization or the district or the CMO, whatever that's coming into play. Adults are people too. They have big feelings that arise. They're going through things in their life. They're going through life changes, and even positive changes like getting married or having a child can be really challenging because it's something different for you to see and different for you to do. So they're newer in their career. They're professionally not as mature. There's just a million ways that this can be hard. And through all of this, the leader is the leader. And their job as the leader is to make sure that those adults do their job no matter what's going on for them. And that can be really rough. So this is part of why I've gone into consulting generally, is that I think that figuring out how to work with leadership, because a leader in a school is an adult who works with adults to get things done for kids, is really just a huge lever in making schools more equitable, more rigorous, more inspiring places for kids to thrive, or for folks at the center of a mission-driven organization to thrive. So I do a lot of different stuff to help with this, but I coach, I consult, I do a thing called coach consulting. This is all available on my website if you're looking to learn more. But I also recently created this piece, the Learning Lab. And I'm really excited about this. So what the Learning Lab is it is a intimate professional development cohort experience where a small group of people comes together. We have usually there are 4 sessions, 90 minutes to 120 minutes each. We meet virtually. It's much easier for everyone. You can connect with people from all over, do it at your own time and schedule. And in that professional development, we have expertly facilitated workshop. I curate the curriculum individually to the challenges of the folks in there. We have some serious work time to roll up our sleeves and get dirty with actually what we're doing. It's a safe space to talk about with others what's going on, what your challenges are. It's a space to even just like think, period. Sometimes leaders are just like so busy on the hamster wheel that like just to sit down and catch your breath and think about like, oh, what do I actually want with this? Or what does this actually mean? Can be so impactful. So it's these sessions. They're usually once a week for 4 weeks. Sometimes they're accelerated twice a week for 2 weeks. Sometimes it's all in one day. No matter what, it comes with a month of support, either through the month of the program or the month after the program. If you do the 1-day program, that's email, phone, Voxer, which is like specially sending messages, like voice memos, which is kind of cool and seems different and is a way to kind of get that support so that I can help you troubleshoot implementation as you bring your work back to your teams and back to your schools and back to your organizations. There are some optional assignments between that I give individual feedback on personally at all times. I review documents. There's a Slack channel that goes with the organization and with the cohort so that you can reach out and ask people for thoughts, because we form a community. This is not about learning from an expert. There is an expert who facilitates us, but this is about tapping into our own knowledge and what we bring, looking at some examples, some exemplars, digging into some case studies, thinking about some ways to go forward and thinking about how we can kind of make sure that we're able to move through this. So that's like the Learning Lab in general. And it's going to be seasonally. There's summer, fall, winter, et cetera. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I want to talk a little bit about the one that's coming up that's starting at the end of July. Registration ends in mid-July. And it's called Leading Won't Break My Soul: How to Start or Restart Your Leadership to Establish a Strong Foundation as you move forward. I might have screwed that title up a little bit because it's kind of a long title because I'm kind of a wordy person. But it is really about, thinking about how do you do what you need to do as a leader to help lead other results successfully. So it gives people some time, it gives them some space, it gives them the ability to take a few deep breaths and to think about some of the things I think about like as the starting point of leadership. So, look, it starts in the end of July. Some schools start August 1st. So it might not be the very beginning of the school year. Some people don't start until after Labor Day. So it might really be ahead of time. But it's the idea of, with the academic year, we have a new start. And even if you're not in school related work, there is just something about September that in August and the start of the school year and going to Walmart and seeing like the backpacks and the pencils and the new crayons out, that kind of gives us all the era and the aura of fresh start. So we have this idea of fresh start. So this is really great. And this particular series is a way to prepare for that fresh start. And I called it Leading Won't Break My Soul because I have honestly just seen too many leaders who get so frustrated working with adults that they're like, that's it, I'm out. I can't do this. And that happens for a lot of reasons. One is that we often promote people in education who have been very successful working with students directly, and then they get promoted to be in a grade level chair or a team lead or an instructional coach or a dean in some sort of position. And they find while they crave that new responsibility, and in so many ways they have so much to offer because of the expertise they bring, there can be some challenges because they ask their team members to do something and their team members don't do it. And then they can't do the thing that they wanted to do for the kids because the team members didn't do it. And that kind of friction can really wear on people over time. Sometimes they say, never mind, I'm going back to what I did. Sometimes they're like, nope, I really wanted to make more money. I really wanted to have more influence, have more impact. I'm actually just going to leave and go do something different. I think it's something like 3 out of 5 teachers leave in the first 5 years of education. I think the average tenure of a principal is 4 years. That is extraordinarily short. And the difference of a tenured or a long-term and effective teacher or principal is so tremendous on students that when we lose those people, we're really losing out on decades of potential impact ahead. And so I basically have seen leadership and leading adults be something that does break people's souls and just makes them think like, I'm out. And I really thought that captured what we wanted to do in grounding ourselves and thinking like, what do I need as a leader from my people? What's easy for me? What do I struggle with? And how do I move this forward? So I think that will be really interesting. I think the song really kind of talks about like quitting your job and leaving it all behind. And the reality is that for some people that might be a possibility. And other people, like, they have dependents, they have bills to pay, they have mortgages. You might not feel like you can just like chuck it all away and go. And I think that actually we can learn and work on some pieces to add to your toolbox that will make it easier for you to feel more effective so that you won't actually have to feel that way. And you can actually get back to why you wanted to be in education in the first place and really tap into that as you go through. So this includes, so what is the Learning Lab, right? So there's a curriculum that's customized to the needs of participants. I'll talk a little bit about the curriculum in a little bit, but basically I take a broad arc, and then I look at the pre-work that people send in and I customize it to that particular group so that even if a session is running at the same time, it might not be exactly the same material because it's so customized to every particular group. It's helpful in actionable feedback directly from me on any materials you produce for the course. It's recordings of all the meetings that you have those to access forever, or could use them as clips or in your own professional development or in turn keen to do with your team if you want to explore a concept, et cetera, that's been shared. There are case studies, role plays, and kind of other really meaningful learning experiences to make sure that this works like in real life, not just on your Zoom. There's a Slack channel that facilitates communication and a community building, as well as at least a month of unlimited support from me directly in this. There also, as part of this, is a shared Google Drive, which has your templates, your resources, your examples, your tools that you can use in perpetuity. So I'm a pretty engaging facilitator, not to pat myself on the back, but I'm kind of known for it. And so I make sure that it's really sequenced effectively, that we have a lot of breaks and time and movement and fun. And we're able to also have some work time, because I know as a leader, if I set 2 hours aside to work on this, like I have 2 hours, I don't have 2.5, I don't have 3, I have 2. And so I, as the facilitator of this, am making sure that you have time to do work that moves the ball forward during those 2 hours. So I think that in some ways, really, there's a lot of benefits, right? There's like a lot of benefits. So one is that really investing in yourself as a leader. And I think this is incredibly important. I picture like a long row of dominoes, right? And all of those dominoes, from the student who just enrolled this morning to the superintendent, let's say in a particular district, are all places where you can intervene. You can work with a small group of students in a tutoring situation, like really move the needle on that. You can work with the math teacher, and that's going to really help move the needle for the folks in 5th grade math, or for the kids in 3rd grade math or 8th grade math or algebra. You could work through the math department chair, and the math department chair will really allow you to then reach all the math teachers. And when I think about particularly a school building, I think that when you focus on the leadership, right, any domino that's a leader, when you knock it down, knocks down a ton of other dominoes with it. And so that to me is the most impactful place to work. And there's a huge ripple effect. And I think sometimes leaders, maybe because of their humility, which is a wonderful trait generally, maybe because school budgets are often strapped and it can feel like a Sophie's choice. Where do I put this money and how does this work? And maybe just for lots of other reasons, sometimes are reluctant to invest in themselves. They're saying, I'll send you to PD, I'll do this for you, but I'll hold off. I'll be okay. I'll take the burden on. And the reality is that catches up with them. And then you hear them later saying like, I just can't do it anymore. And you're thinking, wait a second, step outside yourself for a minute. If you were viewing yourself, you would say, this person is absolutely essential to the leadership of our school, and I am going to invest everything I can in them, right? I just heard a leader of a small charter network say last week to me at lunch, every principal needs a coach. They need an external coach. And I was like, yes, you get it. Amen. Right? It is an investment, but is an investment in the efficacy of the entire organization, right? It's like you take any cost of professional development for a leader and you divide it by the number of kids and adults in that building. And that is the amount of impact that you get. Or maybe you multiply it by that. So you look at a number and you say, well, that's a big number. Divided by the number of kids and teachers. And you think, wow, for like $10 a person, holy moly, is that going to really help a lot more than other things can do? So anyway, I feel really passionate about this. I can get kind of like off on my crazy self about it, but this really invests time in your development as a leader. It invests the leader muscle. It gives you insightful knowledge kind of culled from my library, digital and hard drive, whatever, my real life library and my hard drive. All the knowledge that kind of helps bring some new perspective, good discussions, crucial skill development, helpful mindset work, being challenged, being cared for. I'm really practical. Everything is fairly actionable. There are things that you could work on in Learning Lab on Monday and use with your team on Tuesday if you wanted to. It's that easy to turn around. It's that practical. You could say, I did a workshop with a leader last week, a different program, but the same idea. We did something on Thursday, she rolled it out at her team retreat on Monday, right? She went through it, she had the space, she developed, and now she's able to turnkey it to her staff. So again, these are some of the magnified benefits that we're talking about here. There's also a community. I think that we're also isolated, and a lot of us are the only math department chair in our organization. We're the only instructional coach for early literacy. We're the only assistant principal. And so this gives you a chance to talk to some other people in role-like positions across the country that can really be helpful. And lastly, I just think that I know what it's like to be the leader where you're always on and you're always doing. And the beauty of this is it really gives you a chance to be the learner, right? And I just think that that is a luxury that leaders deserve, honestly. So quick side trip down memory lane here. So this is very similar to a number of other programs that I've run. So I want to talk about two in particular. So one is I ran what we kind of for shorthand called the Rookie Academy. This was 15 years ago, probably in 2006 or 7. And basically, I was the dean of instruction at a school. I think there were probably about 20 teachers total at the school. And we realized, the principal and I, that there were going to be 8 new teachers in the fall. And, you know, new teachers, you love them. They bring in tons of energy. They're great, but it can be just a calamity, right? And so when you have 8 of them in a building, 1 out of every 3 classrooms, and a lot of them were focused in the 7th and 8th grades, which one might argue are more challenging, we felt like the success of the school year would rise and fall on the success of those teachers. And so I created a group that met weekly with teachers, with all the new teachers, at our high school and at our middle school. We had one teacher who was going into his second year who put himself into it because he felt like it would be beneficial for his learning. And we basically did a lot of leadership development work, kind of similar to what we're doing here. And we saw tremendous results. In that year, we saw that we retained all the talent, which was huge. We didn't have any mid-year vacancies. We had some really solid teaching, right? We did not have any huge cultural gaps. There was a lot to work on, right? And we worked through it. We did a lot of group coaching, individual work. With the Rookie Academy, I was working more on working directly with students and their teaching skills. But we saw great results, right? And we didn't have any huge cultural breaches or ripples. That was 15 years ago. As of today, that group, with the exception, I think with 90% of that group is still involved in education. 28% are still teaching. This is 15 years later. 50% either are or have been school leaders before, and 38% are or have been systems level leaders. And those numbers add up to a little bit more than 100 because some people have been both, or they maybe were a principal and now they're back in the classroom as a master teacher, et cetera. But the results were just unbelievable. And it was really gratifying to see their growth and to see where they were at. I also did another program, and this one was more specifically on leadership development and making sure that adults who worked with adults really were up for the job. So I did this at the school that I started. It was called Leadership Pathways. And if you were even interested in being a grade level chair, a team leader, any coaching somebody, any sort of like entry level leadership position, all the way up until the principal vacancies that we knew we had coming up in the next few years, you had to complete Leadership Pathways, which met maybe twice a month during the academic year. It was like a little more heavy in the fall and less in the spring. So it was an internal pathway for development where we talked about leading with radical candor, working with adults, modeling what you expect as a leader, having difficult conversations, how to make sure that people were more likely to do what you want them to do, right? All the different ways you think about it. And so it was transformative, right? We moved the leadership demographics from our school up like 48% of our leaders of color, which was really important to us, given that we predominantly serve students of color. We had several vacancies internally at higher levels, like assistant principal and principal. We were able to fill internally with confidence. And I think we were able to develop this bench. And we had people who joined who were like, I thought I wanted to do this. I'm good. Like, this is really messy. This is a lot, which was a huge win in my book, because that meant that they were able to, it was a huge win in my book because they were able to realize that this was not for them. And I would much rather have people realize that early than later on when they're in a position like assistant principal, right, or instructional coach that can have many more ripple effects. So through both of these experiences, I loved it. I found it super energizing. I would like stay up late at night working on feedback. I was always prepping the session room like several hours before because I'm obsessive like that about making sure it's like eager. I made a playlist with everyone's pump up song individually. We got the snacks, right? I'm taking phone calls and texts from people who are like, I had that conversation. We talked about leadership pathways. Can we debrief it? Yeah, come to my office. Let's talk about this, right? And it just took a tremendous amount of time. And at the time I was a CEO. And so anytime I was spending on that was not time I was not spending searching for a new building, doing our charter renewal, whatever the case may be. And so I was constantly looking for a place where I could send people to get some of this development that would help them with their work leading adults, that would then ensure that they were able to be successful. And I couldn't find it. And so that's really what planted the seed for the Learning Lab, is I felt like, oh, wow, this could be really great. I wish it was somewhere. And so then when I went out on my own freelancing, I decided to create it, which was super great. So it's a little bit different, right? Because these aren't all going to be people. You can apply, enroll as an individual. The only person from your school. Groups can enroll, which does trigger a 10% discount. You can just reach out to me on how to process that. So I think that there are a lot of, this allows, side note on that, groups and attending as a group or 4 people or more triggers a 10% discount. You can just reach out to info@bethnapleton.com or message me on any of my social media platforms to learn more about how to apply that discount. But what I love about groups is that it allows a CEO or an executive director or superintendent to be like, if you are going to be a team lead, go to this PD. If you are struggling with this, I'm going to send this whole group of you there. And then you're able to have that experience individually as learners and then share that with other people as you go through. So wrapping up in a few minutes, but the Learning Lab is for you if you like things that are concrete and practical. This is not a lot of theory. There's some, but it's really about how does this theory then apply to what we do with adults every day. You need to be open to learning about and applying new practices, right? If you come in and you're like, but I just do things the way I do them and I'm so comfortable in that, like, I'm going to push you a little bit, because if you do what you always do, you'll get what you always get. And so if you're looking for a change in what you're seeing in your leadership and how you're feeling when you're managing adults, we need to change some of our practices, and we'll be here to support you. I'll be here personally to support you for at least a month of the program, if not longer, depending on if you qualify for any bonuses. I need you to be honest about the challenges facing you, because I think that really, it's a safe space. It's like Vegas. What happens in the Zoom stays in the Zoom. And so we want to be real about it so that we can really just like address it and get down to it. It's helpful to be motivated to get better at this. And if you're just motivated because you feel like you've been banging your head against a wall and you would like that banging to stop, then great. That is all the motivation you need. This might not be the part of your job you like the most. It might not be why you went into it. It might not be what gratifies you, but we can make it easier. We can make it so that you don't lose as much sleep or aren't as stressed about it. We can add some tools and tricks, some perspective, some validation, some application of some new skills to help make this easier. And if you're excited for the community, I think that would be great too. I think that's going to be a really nice benefit of this. And I'm certainly looking forward to that as we go through. So a couple of things. Let's talk for a second about the arc of Leading Won't Break My Soul. So the title is Leading Won't Break My Soul, How to Build a New Foundation to Start or Restart Your Leadership Practices to be a Purposeful and Authentic Leader. So a quick note, it says start or restart. You don't have to be new at your job to do this. You don't have to be rising into a new position. You can just say, you know what, I'm not really that happy with aspects of leading adults right now. And I would like to devote some time and expertise to cultivating my toolbox and making it bigger so that I have a more robust toolbox as I go into the fall and the year beyond. So it follows an arc. So basically the first thing we do is we spend a lot of time thinking initially about you. your leadership beliefs, your identity, your archetypes, your beliefs, where those come from, why you think that. I'm a certified Gallup strengths coach. And so we'll bring some of that strengths coaching in as a complementary feature, and a bonus to this is thinking about how do you lead with your strengths and how does that help you think about who you are? Because like, as Lauryn Hill says, how are you going to win if you ain't right within? And so really, how do we just at least get familiar with ourselves inside, or spend some time thinking about it and use some tools? And then we'll also talk about how you can use those tools with your team as well. So you can turnkey a lot of this PD you do something with us, you can do it similarly with them to help, especially if you are a leader who leads other leaders. So you are an assistant principal who leads the grade level chairs, you are a principal who leads a team, you are the CEO who leads the principals, et cetera. Second piece is establishing clear expectations for yourself and others. And so this is going to be vary by organization. There might be organization-wide expectations. We'll talk about how do you uphold those, even if you're not really on board. How do you think about maybe changing those if those are necessary? How do you communicate this to people? How do you hold them to it? And then that kind of goes into where we go the second half of the series, which is how do you actually make those expectations come alive, right? How do you make sure that they're easy to remember, that they're clear, that they are equitable and don't infringe on folks differently because of different identities that they might have? How do you revisit them? How do you celebrate folks who really live up to them? How do you celebrate growth in those areas? And what are some of those pieces? And then we're going to also talk about like what happens when that doesn't work, right? I laid these expectations out, I did what we said, and this person still was late to first period, and this person still was grossly inappropriate with a parent, right? So how do we talk about that? How do you ground yourself? How do you prepare for those conversations? How do you think about them? I think that's going to be really great. And then lastly, we'll really think about, hey, this ends in August and there's a big year ahead for those who are on the academic year. So how do you really think about that and applying and keeping these lessons in mind as you go forward with the year ahead? So it looks like there are a few questions. So there are two that I'll answer, which will be great. And then we'll sign off. So first question is, would you do the Learning Lab just for my organization? Could I do Leading Won't Break My Soul just for folks in my organization? And the answer is absolutely. There's a minimum number of participants, and sometimes the scheduling looks a little bit different depending on your schedule and works for you. But if that's the case, you should reach out to me, which is info@bethnapleton.com. So if you go to my website here, bethnapleton.com, there is like some sort of contact me page, and you can always go through there and send inquiry, and we can talk about maybe doing this for your organization. It also has a bunch of other stuff on there about all the other stuff I do if you're interested in that as well, or think that there might be a different way that you want to work together. And then somebody said, what are you doing next? What's happening in the fall? Very excited about the fall. There's definitely a concept in education called the October slump, right? Like New Year, everyone's starting great. Everyone's so excited. And like the shit hits the fan in October. People are crying all over, adults, kids, principals. It just can be, it seems like forever till Thanksgiving and a little bit of a break. Stuff's getting real, that like new school energy is gone. So we are going to talk about leading through cultural challenges. We're going to talk about leading when the bloom is off the rose, right? So how do you say, like, we're a little bit into this year, we have this great vision, we were also excited in August, but here in October, it's really tough. So we're going to talk about the cultural challenges that people bring to the organization, some frameworks for thinking about it, some case study. You tell me the cultural challenges that you bring, and we'll make sure that we think about how to approach those and go through. So I'm really excited to do that. That's going to be starting in the last week of September. So signups will go through about mid-September. And then I'm excited for winter too. So I'm still not ready to go public with what's going to happen in 2023. But what we're going to do in that stretch of between Thanksgiving and the winter holiday break is we're going to actually do it as a 1 day or maybe 2 half days. I forgot what I decided on. Maybe it's both. I forget. But we're doing a virtual retreat. That's the headline. So it'll be a virtual retreat, and it'll be about planning to reset for the new year. Because in my experience as a leader, that is both a helpful checkpoint to say, how are we doing now that we're about to round out this calendar year and go in? And you have such an amazing chance to reset in January with your kids and your teachers and your faculty and your schools and your principals, that we're going to spend some time thinking about things that you want to reset and making a plan to reset so that you can come back and start the year strong. So I'm excited for that, because that'll be more of an intense structure given that the calendar is limited. But I think that people will walk out with, I know that people will walk out with a plan to reset so that the first day back from break, they are able to really hit the ground running, and they've done the work in that time between Thanksgiving and the winter holidays to go ahead and apply it. So I think that'll be fantastic. Anyway, it's been a bunch of fun talking about this. I hope you enjoyed it, and check out the website to learn more, and reach out via the website or any of my social media channels to ask any questions you might have. But I look forward to seeing you in the Learning Lab. Take care.